David Coletto is the CEO of Abacus Data and a CPAC partner in the Democracy Project. He's been asking Canadians lots of questions for our series this week, and he is with me in the studio now. David, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
You will be a regular feature in our coverage of election and democracy issues in the months ahead, so it's good to have you on board for this. First of all, tell me about this survey. What do we need to know about the nuts and bolts of this?
So this is a brand new survey. We completed it from March 14th to 18th, 2019, interviewed 1,500 Canadians, representative sample across the country. Some events have happened in some political events that before this and after this, but I think it's taken into account a lot of the flux that we've seen in Canadian politics over the last few months.
We should point out in this particular discussion we're having tonight, you didn't poll Canadians on the SNC-Lavalin issue for this part of our conversation, but you are seeing an effect, right? And we're going to hear about that later in the week.
It shows up, and we'll talk a lot about leadership in the vote.
Okay, we're still 7 months away from the vote, but we're already getting an idea of what matters to Canadians. So let's go through the numbers. What are the top issues are likely to drive the votes of Canadians?
So we asked Canadians, we gave them a long list of things, over 25, and we said, which three are you most likely going to impact your vote? And if we show the numbers, it's clear and not surprising, I think, to most people watching that healthcare, economic growth, cost of living, and taxes, and services and healthcare services in particular for seniors and housing affordability are really those that get at least almost a third of Canadians saying these are in my top issues. Healthcare has been near the top of our list for some time. I think given some of the things that we saw in the budget, right? Mm-hmm. Some focus on seniors, some focus on housing affordability. It's lining up with a lot of these concerns that Canadians have told us are important.
The politicians know the same things that you're finding out in your surveys about what matters to Canadians, right? Yeah. Talk to me about, it's clear in these numbers that affordability is going to be a big issue. Writ large, affordability, housing, wages, all those things that really matter to sort of pocketbook issues to Canadians, they're going to be key.
They are, and they're rising up. So if you include cost of living, taxes, housing affordability, those are all things that affect different people in different ways, and some respond differently to these questions, but it's all about that sense of being able to afford the life that people want and need. And I think there's a little bit of pressure being put on households today.
I think what you've done here that's really interesting, I think, and our viewers can see a kind of a snapshot here of what matters to different kinds of Canadians. Right. You've looked at this generationally. What did you find?
Well, some interesting differences. When we look at baby boomers, Gen Xers, and millennials, those three big generations that are going to have a big influence on the election, I don't think the differences across generation aren't necessarily surprising, but confirm life stage, where you are in your life. So for boomers, for example, seniors issues, healthcare, and the economy to some extent are top issues. They also are more likely to say taxes and dealing with the deficit are important to them. For Gen X, those more in their middle age, sort of near the end to midpoint of their career, they're also concerned about healthcare, but they're also more likely to say cost of living and the economy are top of mind in terms of issues that matter, as with helping the middle class. And for the youngest group of Canadians, cost of living and housing. Housing and a lot of other research that we've done really indexes out as something that they're particularly concerned about. How are they going to afford a place to live? You also see that climate change. The two other generations, it's important, but it's not near the top of the list. For younger Canadians, climate change is something that they do prioritize.
And again, explains things like we've seen in the recent budget, right? These are the stuff for millennials we saw in the budget. Yeah. Clearly evidenced.
Lines up with what they're saying are their key concerns.
Okay, so let's talk about, we're talking a lot in this series this week about the notion of trust. And it's going to be sort of at play in a big way in the election campaign for a number of reasons this time around. And you can look at that notion of trust when it comes to, okay, these are my issues. Yeah. Which party do I think is most likely to act on my issues? What did you find?
Well, what we did is among those who, for example, picked healthcare as their top issue, we then said, which party do you think is best able or do you trust the most to deal with it? And there are some differentiators. So for example, on healthcare, the Liberals have a significant advantage over the Conservatives and the New Democrats on that issue. They also, surprisingly to some, but not surprisingly to Liberals, if you ask them, tie on the economy. Those are issues that they care a lot about. Mm-hmm. Housing, seniors, and climate change, Liberal supporters are much more likely to say those are top issues. If we look at Conservative Party supporters, though, very different issue set, which starts to, I think, suggest where this election might go. You're talking to two very different audiences. They're much more likely to say taxes, the economy, cost of living, the deficit, and then illegal immigration. That's on no other party supporters' radar, but among Conservatives, it's one of the top ones. Among New Democrats and Green Party supporters, we see a slightly different but similar set of issues to the Liberals. Healthcare, cost of living, housing, income inequality, interestingly, is near the top for New Democrats, as is climate change. And then if we look at the Greens, not a surprise, the environment and climate change are the top two issues for Green Party supporters. Healthcare, cost of living, and then a similar issue related to the environment, a transition to the clean economy, also indexes higher for Green Party supporters.
And then you looked at, okay, so these are where people feel they find a home for these issues in the parties, and then there's the issue of parties best able to deal with them. What do you find there?
Yeah, and this is where we start, again, see some distinction. Those who care about healthcare, for example, are more likely to think that the Liberal Party is able to deal with it than the Conservatives or the New Democrats. On the big issue of the economy, some say the economy is the only issue that matters in an election. You can see here it's actually quite close.
Yeah, it'd be competitive, a bit of an edge to the Conservatives.
Slight edge, but no real advantage either way. Cost of living, the Conservatives have an advantage, although there's a sizable group of Canadians who say, I'm not sure which party has the best policy here, or I don't think any of them do. But look at taxes. Right? If you care about taxes in Canada, right now you are almost 4 times more likely to think the Conservatives have the best plan to deal with it than the Liberals. And so you can start to see some of that differentiation across some of these other issues.
And you look at some of these other key issues as well. I think we have more to show.
Yeah, seniors, healthcare and services, they are not a big advantage for the Liberals, pretty evenly split among the 3 parties. Housing affordability, interesting, this was done before the budget in this particular question, and there was a large group of Canadians who cared about this issue who weren't really sure which party. So there was room for a party, for example, like the Liberals, who made it a centerpiece of their budget to try to create some distinction between the other parties. No real advantage. The environment, climate change, not surprising, we consistently see this, that if you care about this these issues, and you ask people which party is best able to deal with them, the Green Party has a massive advantage over the others. But if you compare the Liberal numbers to the Conservative numbers, which is when as you get into how does this affect the vote, you start to see where this issue perhaps is a liability for the Conservatives and one the Liberals can take advantage of.
All right, David Coletto, that gets the conversation started. You'll be back with us again tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.